Good evening and welcome back to the shop here in beautiful Canterbury, New Hampshire. We've had so much fun in the past few weeks working on a table much like this one. I'm going to talk to you about the process of finishing that designer table. And I want to show you some interesting, what I think are quite simple ways of finishing a table like this and getting amazing results. I guess this is the fourth week we've been talking about this table in one way or another. What I ended up taking you through the process of was taking a very simple tapered leg table like this. It would be considered a shaker style, but we wanted to take it and play around with it a little and actually put some splash on it that the shakers never would have, and make it into something more contemporary, more of a federal design piece. If you were with us in the last few weeks, we featured this zebra wood and decided to put the veneer on the legs and the apron, decided to orient it on the apron in the vertical dimension. So that's the beautiful thing about veneer, is you can use it like paint. It's not restricted by the grain direction because it's so thin. When it gets glued to hard wood, it's too thin to overcome the stability of the hardwood. So it's just a kind of a skin, a solid wood, although thin, on solid wood. So we used that for the legs. And then on the top, we used, it's kind of like a quilted maple. It was a curly maple, but it has much more vibrancy and movement in it. And we use that for the infield with a zebra wood border and also some ebony lines. We used thin veneer like this for the top, and then we used some hard ebony lines for the bottom. I'm going to show you the finished table at the end. That's why I'm not showing you right now, because I want to have an unveiling, But I did make a second top, and I want to show that to you now. Here's the top, and I've already got one thin coat of finish on it. Check it out, huh? See how nice that this zebra wood gets a gorgeous combination of browns and golden tones, and then highlighted with the dark brown lines. So we've got our ebony lined veneer, this here on this infield, and then we have the hard gaboon ebony line edge, which we talked about last week. We made our lines and put them in, and I've got them cleaned up for you and already got a little coat of finish on there. But I want to back up a little bit before this coat of finish and show you the process that I'm going to use to finish this table, because you can get these great results without knocking yourself out. So I got a few little sample boards of the zebra wood. I glued, just to do a test, the zebra wood to a 3/4 inch panel. So I'm going to just put some shellac on that. So shellac, it's the wonder finish. It's really a beautiful, easy finish. It's been around for ages, and it's probably most famously known for use in French polishing, although that's a difficult way of applying it. It takes getting a feel for it. And so you can apply it with the French polish, or you can just spray it on like I've shown you in the past. You can buy it in aerosol cans. Simple. But you can also buy it in pre-mixed cans by Bullseye. This is a clear shellac. I made this into a 1.5 pound cut. It starts out as a 3-pound cut, which simply means 3 pounds of shellac to 1 gallon of denatured alcohol. Here's some shellac prior to mixing with denatured alcohol. So these are flakes. These aren't the super thin flakes, but you can see, I'll put it down here so you can see it better. So this is a refined version of it. It actually starts out quite dark, quite red, and deep red orange. And as it's refined, it gets lighter and lighter in color. So this is called a de-waxed super light shellac. And It's also called blonde shellac for its color. I've got another already mixed up shellac in here, and this is not quite so refined, and this is actually orange shellac in here. Let me just show you what the color is. So you can see the orange color in relation to the blonde right there. And this I'll typically use on deeper colored woods like walnut or mahogany, you know, just those darker woods that the amber is fine. But in dealing with lighter colored woods, like this zebra wood has a lot of color in it, but I don't want to orange it up or deepen it, so I'm going to go with the blonde shellac. I'm not going to show you the mixing this up, but this is a thicker flake. It's kind of, it would take a long time for it to dissolve in a jar. So believe it or not, what helps a lot is to grind it up in a coffee grinder, which I did yesterday, and pulverized it, and then put it in the appropriate amount of denatured alcohol to give me about a 2-pound cut. And I put that in this bottle. So this is what I just showed you, that blonde shellac, now in a 2-pound cut. 2 pounds of flakes to 1 gallon of alcohol. Now, when I use this alcohol around here, it's good if you can get the kind with the green on there, because they say it's green, but it actually has less methanol in it, only up to 5%, where the other blue cans can have as much as 50% methanol, which is pretty nasty for breathing. So there's some other additives in there as well. So you want to use this with some ventilation, but this one's definitely a safer version. I'm just going to spray a very tiny bit, and I'm going to turn on my dust collector, which is going to be pulling the air right away. And I'm just going to do a very tiny bit. We could brush this on. That's the nice thing about shellac. You can brush it easily, you can spray it, or you can pat it on, which is the way of the French polish, which I'm going to show you a kind of French polishing in a few minutes. I've already got some shellac in this gun, and I actually am using the blonde shellac here. You can get de-waxed shellac, which is sold by Seal Coat, pre-mixed, and this that I mixed up is de-waxed. So this will go on top of this. This does still have some wax in it. It's not been refined out, but it's no big deal. Here we go. See how easy that was? It's a lot easier than brushing and easier than patting, but what I just showed you was the first step of French polishing if you're using the American method, and I believe the English also use this method and some others. But if I was French polishing in France, I would start not with shellac on the bare wood, I would start with mineral oil on the bare wood. You'd rub it in and wipe it all off, and then you would begin applying shellac. And you might say, hey, isn't that going to contaminate the shellac and be a mess? Well, no, it actually does not conflict. It actually comes, it kind of rises out of the finish, and it's compatible enough that it's not even a big deal. In fact, it's not uncommon to use a little mineral oil. And the alcohol in there, as you go along, it spirits it out. It helps to lubricate the pad so it doesn't stick a lot on there while you're going along too. But I want to show you the American method. If this was a true American method, I would have brushed on a more generous amount. You know, I would have put it on even a little thicker than this so that you start to body the surface. You're trying to get some shellac body on the surface and then build it up with the pad. Now, I'm going to use the French polish method, not to show you the whole French polish method. That's a really acquired skill, which I frankly don't have. But I am going to show you a method that I have used numerous times, and you can actually use the shellac and French polishing pad in such a way as to be a grain filler. Why, might you ask? Shall we do that? Well, this project is perfect to show how to do that because we've got two kinds of wood here. One is open grain, the very porous zebra wood, and one is a closed grain wood, the maple. Very, very tight grain here, so you don't have those big, deep open pores. I'm not asking you to zoom in, but if you could zoom in here, you would see a lot of little pores. The extreme of that is like oak. We're familiar with how deep the pores are in oak. Oak's an exceptionally open-pored wood, open-grained wood. So we're gonna finish this with a few layers of finish, but it may or may not bother you to have open grain next to closed grain, but you're gonna see like little tiny pits, you know, almost like the surface of an orange, you know, but just like little tiny dimples where all those pores are. But you can fill those. They do make commercial grain fillers, which you could use, and you can use those in clear, but I decided not to use them. I don't use them very often. Really, I don't find that I need to, even on walnut. Walnut's an open grain wood, but not as open as this one. Many times they, just in the finishing process, the pores get filled so much that it's really a non-issue by the time you get to the end. If you could just put coat after coat after coat of finish, you would eventually fill those pores, but you'd have a thick surface. So by using a grain filler or this method I'm about to show you, you can get a really good start on filling the pores. So maybe only 2 top coats, you'll have them filled, all right? So we started with a very thin coat of shellac on this one. So I want to show you using this French polishing method to fill the grain primarily on the outside. On the edges, we'll just hit it quick. Those aren't that important. You don't have to worry so much there. It's really where you see it here. Now, after spraying that, I can feel it's kind of rough. So I'm going to just lightly sand, and I'll get some 320 grit prior to getting the French polishing going. Now this 320, it doesn't really matter which direction I go in this case, so just kind of hit that outside. I'm trying to stay, I don't want to be straight across the grain. I'll stay kind of in circles or whatever. And then here the grain is running actually this way. So you've got, and then this grain's running this way. But because it's 320, it's not scratching deep enough to be an issue. We're gonna fill it anyway in a second with the shellac, so. But this is just making it nice and smooth to begin our little French polishing process.
Dan wrote out what I think is a description of how to say French polish in French.
Oh, really?
So you can see it later when you look at the comments.
Is Dan a French speaker?
I don't know. He must be, or he Googled it. I don't know.
Dan?
Been holding out on us.
Are you? Hey, I want to say hello to Pat in Dublin, Ireland. Mm-hmm. I can't believe you watch from Dublin, Pat,
he
at this late hour over there.
1 in the morning.
Yeah, commented, my old home country, at least by name. Many of you heard me talk about growing up in my neighborhood was all Irish Catholic, and quite the experience to grow up with these huge families in this little neighborhood in the city of Lowell. The Meehan's, the Callahans, the Conleys, the Quinlans, and the McLaughlins.
That's awesome.
All right, so there we go. We got that all nicely silky smooth. So Now I'm going to just dust her off. It's shellac powder in there, so you don't really have to worry about it being on any white spot in there, because it actually is will melt when the shellac hits it. So there you go, nice and smooth. Now let's prepare our French polishing pad. Now a French polish pad, typically you want to have some kind of absorbent material to hold the polish inside the pad, and I've got some wool. This works great. I suppose you could ball up some rags, but this works really well the way it dispenses the French polish. And then you're going to have an outer covering, and you want some kind of tough material. It can be cotton or linen. This is a kind of linen that I got some time ago. You just grab a chunk and you make it about an egg size, you know. So there, you wrap it, twist it, and you get this nice kind of tight ball. Now, this is not the greatest, I didn't spend much time on there, but we fill with the shellac. That's why I have it in these bottles. So it's nice to have it in some dispensing bottles like this. Get these caps off. So I've got my 2-pound shellac here. You could use it a little heavier, but that's good. And my denatured alcohol here. So the last thing we may use a touch of is some mineral oil, like the French, but we're not going to put it right on the wood this time. And I've got some of that already in here. This is what I also use when honing the card scraper. So I keep it in a cup like this. It's nice to have around. Now, if you keep the pad in an airtight jar, like a mason jar like this, that seals tightly, it'll keep for months. So as long as it doesn't dry out, you can have this if you want to pad on or put a little finish on somewhere, okay, in this way. So this one is very, very lightly damp, but you can see as I open it up, it's got the wool, and we need to get some liquid on there. So it's already pretty charged, it's damp, so I'm not going to put a ton on here, but you feed it from inside like this. You definitely want to start with the alcohol, just put a little bit in there, and then we'll put a little shellac on there. Let me put a little more alcohol, okay, and then we'll wrap it up. And you're going to just kind of pressure and squeeze it. You can start to feel it, so you get that good look on your hand. You don't want to soak the pad, and you don't want it too dry. You have to have it just the right consistency in there. But then you're going to pull it so it's nice and hard there, and with pressure. So I'll start out very light while it's dispensing, and then we'll add a little pressure. Now, to fill the pores, and to kind of sand the surface while you're going over it, you use this 4F pumice. It's a very fine ground powder, very fine. I can barely feel the grit. They make a 2F, a 4F, and then in the old days they used to use rotten stone, would be even finer for polishing surfaces of tables. I used to use this actually when rubbing out a tabletop, and this gives you a nice polished kind of sheen, and then the rotten stone would be even shinier. Now I use more of these pre-mix rubbing compounds that you can get from automotive stores. But here I've got the 4F pumice in a little shaker bottle. I'm going to sit down for this because this is an awesome opportunity to sit down. It's at the right height, and I want to see it, so I'm always looking to see glancing light coming down at a 45 so I can see what's happening. All right. Now, I'm going to start on the outside. First, I'm just going to lightly start. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. And I'm very lightly on there, and I'm using circular. Now, I'm just barely seeing anything happen, so I'm going to put a little more pressure. You see how it's starting to color? Now, here's the amazing quality of shellac. It's just an amazing material. It's natural excretion from the lac bug, and you can take one flake And by dissolving it in alcohol and dispensing it this way, one flake can spread over an amazing amount of area because it's going on so microscopically thin. So as I move along like this, as soon as I move, it's dry over here. It flashes off and it dries so fast. And each successive coat melts into the previous. So you get this incredibly elegant, thin coat by just going over it and over it. Now, once I've got just that little bit of a start, I'm going to introduce some pumice, and this is going to, it's going to get kind of embedded into the pad, and it also is going to get colored by the shellac and get kind of scrapings from the wood and the finish, and it's going to get packed into the pores. And that's what fills your pores a little bit. So let's see if I've got this wet enough. It's too damp. I'm just going to start bringing this in. So these little circular motions, can you hear it? That is the pumice abrading. Now, it's starting to stick a little bit, so I'm going to do two things. I'm going to bring in...
We can hear it.
Oh, good. I'm going to bring in a little alcohol, and then a touch of mineral oil on the pad, okay? So rather than going all over everything. And this will give me, I've got a little more alcohol, so now it's gliding along. And I can actually see like a comet tail. It's evaporating right behind it as fast as I'm going. And I'm not putting too much pressure on right now, but as it starts to dry out, you can increase pressure. This is why, like, a really sweet French polish is labor intensive and time consuming, but you don't have to set up any equipment, so when you get really good at it, it is amazing how fast you can create a beautiful French polish. So I'm going around here, now I can start, I would start going around the other side. So you can kind of see the smeary surface, there is a coating on there, and as you successfully go over, introduce a little more pumice, and you start to see the pores getting filled. I'll just do a tiny bit more. We don't want to watch me do this forever. And just now I'm going to start bearing down a little more because it's drying a little. Shellac is also food safe. It's used on a lot of products. It's very commonly used to coat pharmaceutical pills and various foods. Now, I forgot to mention, when you spread the pumice, you want to do it from a high altitude so it'll really spread out and go down thinly. All right, so you get the idea. You go until you start to see those really shrinking. You will see those pores getting smaller and smaller, and then I would hit the infield. You don't have to hit this a ton because the pores are already full, and you're going to just kind of build with your shellac all around there.
Oh, it's so pretty.
Okay, now the edges we're going to load up with a little more shellac and not be so fussy with them. I would just hit them like so. Okay, then you let this thing rest. Once you've got it bodied up, you want to let it rest for several hours. It'll cure and harden. Then you can come back and do some more. A lot of times you use overnight before the next one. But I'm going to show you a panel that I did earlier, and we'll take it to the next level. How about that? Here's a panel that got this treatment. Can you see that sheen? Mm-hmm. That's just from French polishing what I just did on that edge. So you can see how it starts to build. I've got a little excessive build right here with the pumice, but the pores are still evident, but they're very tiny compared to how they started out. So it will only take probably a couple coats of the top coat of finish to fill those. So we'll put on the finish, sand it, another coat of finish, and probably be pretty close to there, or enough that they don't bother you at all. So there. So now I'm going to go from the shellac here to the top coat. And for the top coat, instead of using just shellac, because this is going to be the top of a table, one of the major drawbacks with shellac is that because it's soluble from alcohol, it's very vulnerable to getting water rings and being spoiled by simply spilling an alcoholic drink on it. It would cut right through after not too long. And it also doesn't hold up terribly well to water. I mean, it does, it's quite durable, but it just doesn't have the durability of a type of wiping oil varnish. You've heard me talk many times. You can go right on top of shellac with tung oil. I love Waterlox. You can also use any type of varnish blend that might have a urethane as part of it. That's even more tough. It's not as elegant as tung oil, but the tung oil gives you really great, excellent water protection as well. That's why I favor it. But here, instead of leaving just the shellac, I want to show you a new top coat. I don't think I've showed this very often, but we're going to lacquer this top coat. And we're going to lacquer it not with a big setup, but with just a spray can lacquer that you can get from a box store. Around here you can get it from like the Home Depot or even Walmart or whatever. I'm not sure in Dublin if you can get it. But we've got this now is a little bumpy from the padding right over here. So before I go ahead and put on the lacquer, I'm going to lightly sand this. No problem, because we're going to lightly sand and we're not going to be taking anything out of the pores, which was the main goal there. And because this is wax-free shellac that I'm using, there's complete compatibility with any kind of top coat I want to use here. So I'm going to go with the 320. All right, so I'm going to start sanding. Now this hasn't, I did this like early today, so it's powdering, but it really could have used longer. I'm getting a little bit of pearling up on the paper. And this is a trick I've used many times when I'm rubbing out finishes. You know, your paper gets clogged with the finish or whatever it is, and you get those little pearls on there, and it just stops working, it stops cutting. Well, if you take a little scrub brush like this, and you can scrub the pearls right off and get some more life out of that thing. It starts cutting again. And then it's going to pearl up again. And the reason it's purling up is because this wasn't quite dry enough. It's all right for this demo. I wanted to show you this much anyway.
Do you know the difference between pumice and rotten stone, Tom?
Rotten stone feels almost like ash, like it almost looks like cigar ash. It's so thin. It's just, as far as grit goes, it's a finer grit. I'm not sure. I think it's pumice. I wanted to say it was made from volcanic ash or something, but I don't know that that's true. If anybody knows, I forget, I've read about it too long ago that I can't remember what it comes from. And the rotten stone is kind of a dark gray or black, so it's not the same kind of material, and it's just very, very gentle abrasive. Like I said, it feels literally like cigar ash, just very light. But it does have an abrasive quality. All right, so once you've got that leveled and filled, man, it feels silky, and the grain is so tiny on there now. I could have sanded a little more, but I should have waited longer to sand anyway, but it doesn't matter. I just want to show you now the lacquer technique. This is a small piece again. Now lacquer, again, this is not a vapor you want to be breathing a lot of. I'm just going to do this tiny piece, and I'm going to turn on this powerful air suction over here, so it's going to be pulling the air away, so no worries there. But you would not want to use this inside without some kind of air movement, or wearing an organic vapor mask as well. So here it is. This is the simple material. This is made by Watco. It's their brand of lacquer. There are other brands out there. I believe Minwax has their own. And I know that Mohawk Finishes has probably a better lacquer than this. Sherwin-Williams used to sell it, but I don't believe in the spray can. Back in the early 90s, we used to use Deft. It was a lacquer that you could spray, and it was quite nice. I'm not sure if it's the same mix, but it's also sold as a brushing lacquer. So the nice thing is you don't have to set up all the spray equipment like I had earlier. They had the spray gun. You can just use a can like this. If you want to feel like you have a spray gun, you buy a handle like this, and you clip it on there, clip it onto your can. Okay, see it bites around the rim there. And then you're gonna hold it and pull the gun, okay? And what happens when you pull the trigger, it just pushes down the nozzle. And so you got yourself a beautiful spray gun. So I'm just gonna spray this. I wish this had a spray like a wider fan, but it comes out kind of narrow. So you gotta hold it far enough away and move quickly. Otherwise it will pull up on you. But that just you get used to that. All right, so here we go. I'm just gonna overlap here. All right, that easy. And this is semi-gloss. I'm gonna put it over here by the vacuum. Now I've got one that's already finished. So I leveled that, and then I sprayed it with the lacquer top coat, and I did the exact same to this one. So now you can see, this is how it looks right off the lacquer. With the semi-gloss, you get a soft sheen, kind of elegant. And I can still see a few pores here where I didn't fill heavily, but that's all right. It's pretty close. Now you can sand. Let me show you another sample that I made earlier. Now I did this one because I wanted to see how it was going to look with the shellac on the maple, the ebony, and the open grained zebra wood. Now, before you can do a final step on here, like let's say we built this up to our final thickness. Like I can see the pores are very small on this now. I really like it. So this has been sprayed. This one's been sprayed for about a day, I think. So I can actually do a little bit of sanding, and I'll show you the rub out process on here.
Can you talk about how many coats, Tom? Also, Claude's curious.
Yeah, I would go probably a minimum of. You could actually get by with a minimum of one if you put on a good coat. It's better to do two thinner coats, moving kind of fast, okay? And then you'll get a better result. And between coats, you can very lightly sand with some 400 grit. If you don't feel many nibs or bumps, you don't even have to sand. You can, because the next coat's gonna melt right in. So, but if you wait, like that can says, if you go over 6 hours, you should lightly sand it back to about 320 or whatever. Let's see if the 1200 grit is going to cut. This is what I usually rub out finishes with. So here we go. I'm just gonna lightly hit this. This is gonna knock off all of those little, you know, after you get a finish on, you feel those little tiny bumps. The technical word in the finishing world are nibs. Those are little dust nibs, and you want to cut those off. So just a light go over with 1200 grit, and they come right off. And then a nice finishing polish with this kind of thing, and it gives a soft sheen, is 4/0 steel wool. Now, you should always test this out. That's why this is a test piece. I like having test pieces when I'm trying something new out. I haven't used this type of lacquer that much. However, I can tell you this. When you're going to rub out a finish like this, the longer you can wait before doing it, the better it's going to perform. The lacquer actually doesn't fully cure for a week. So it reaches full properties in a week. So if you can wait, do something else, don't be in a hurry. You can wait, let it kind of hardens up more, where it's much more receptive to the rubbing out process, and you'll get a gorgeous sheen off of the steel wool. Too early and the steel wool feels more like it's scratching, okay? So anyway, that's also true with shellac. You can get a beautiful rub out with shellac if you wait, all right? So I'm gonna use a little felt block. This is what I usually use. Rather than just holding it in a clump, you can get it flat by just unrolling it and put it around a felt block like that. Now look at that, I've got a beautiful pad of wool, and I'm going to just burnish this. I'm just looking for it to get even sheen. Oh man, that's gorgeous. I'm happy with this, and I didn't even have to wait that long. Can you see that shine?
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
All right, now, sometimes if the sheen is a little bit dull, although that took a rubbing out this has not been curing that long. So this is a great little finish if you're in a hurry on a Christmas gift. Oh, you're running late, like is normally the way things go a lot of times in the creative world. But you can also wrap to get a tiny bit more sheen. If you want a little higher burnish, just take a paper towel like this, and you wrap the towel in your felt block. And this has an abrasive quality, almost like a rotten stone. I can see it getting even shinier. If you want that shine, you don't have to go there, but I'm just saying this is what is possible. A lot of times when somebody wants a little higher sheen, I just burnish it with a paper towel after, and it looks almost like a French polish on here. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. So that's like a very quick way of getting the elegance of a French polish with more durability than shellac, because we've got the protective qualities of lacquer over the shellac, and in this case we filled the pores prior to that. Let me show you this other table that you may recognize. This table, we did this star made out of firewood. We used crotch birch to make this star. So I made this little star in this radiant ribbon mahogany top. So we've got an 8-piece match with a kind of a compass rose there, but it's just crotch birch. And when I finished this, when I got the first coat of shellac on there were tiny little gaps. You know, you're going to have tiny little gaps. And I started to put on the varnish, and I didn't want to build a lot there. So I used this process I just showed you. I took the padding shellac and I padded this whole section, and I went over the whole thing. It didn't take, the pore structure in mahogany is much finer than the zebra wood, so it didn't take much out here, but it helped mainly with any tiny little gaps there. So then, when I top coated with the Waterlox finish, it's absolutely level. Now, I haven't done the final rub out. I'm going to rub this out with 1200 grit. So I'm going to sand it and level it. Then I'll use the steel wool, and then probably just what I just showed you, burnish it with a paper towel. In the final, we'll be usually putting a little wax on there. And this is one of my favorites, the Goddard's, lemon oil and beeswax mix. Spritz it on there.
How would you cut the sheen down further if you wanted to, Tom?
I would just go with the 4-aught steel wool. I mean, you can go to a 3-aught, but this 4-aught steel wool gives you a nice satiny, elegance. It's so classy because if you run your hand over it, there's absolute void of nibs. It's silky smooth, and it's gorgeous looking. And just look at that. I mean, that's just an elegant finish. And I'm telling you, if you could feel this, it is so silky. It's just incredible. All right, so there's a really nice finish you can use for a quick project, but I decided to apply it to our little end table. The top only has one coat of lacquer on it so far, but I want to show you the finished table. Here's our finished table with the zebra wood and maple top. But you can see the how this all came out. We put in our, when we were veneering our apron piece here, we put that hard ebony edge on the bottom. And remember when we veneered our legs way back, we put that nice veneered cuff foot on there. And see, these have just been sprayed with that lacquer, just as I just did. The pore structure is very tiny. So I'm going to very lightly sand, very fine, and then I'll burnish it with the steel wool, and that'll be it. No filling there. This top I did go around the whole thing with the pad quite a bit, and then went ahead and sprayed the lacquer on top. So it's got one coat of lacquer so far. But you can really see, look how beautiful that figured maple is. And look at those seams. I mean, this is right off the saw. I mean, you saw me cut and assemble this top. These seams are really nice right off of the veneer saw. So just follow that method and you should have success, like pulling your joints together in that way. There's the bottom. I did put a little color on the poplar, and I used these little pocket holes for attaching the top, similar to this one. But look at the combination. I mean, these are totally different styles, so you may prefer one over the other, and that's fine. I'm just trying to illustrate the variations that are possible with veneer. If I'm going to have contrast, I like it to feel like it's in the same family. Like here we have these golden tones. It's light color, but it relates so well with the lighter lines and the golden tones in the zebra wood. So this whole thing feels like a nice composition. There's a good harmony of colors in that. And I'm usually thinking about that while I'm picking out colors. I don't like heavy, splashy contrasts if I can help it, unless they relate well to each other. So yeah, that came together really well. And this is just a result of going down to my veneer pile and thinking, okay, what would be good to put on that leg? That's how it started. And then what would be good to put in that field? And in those various videos when we did make these, I talked about the process. If you're interested in this, go ahead back. Those are free videos. Check them out.
And we have all of our courses now on our main platform, so it's easy to get to them.
If you enjoy this content, remember to go ahead and subscribe, share. Don't forget to visit us at epicwoodworking.com. Thank you for hanging out with us in the shop. The camera lady and I look forward to seeing you again next week, right back here. Good night, everybody.